Hi, I'm back here with these guys from the Whatever podcast, where they claim that if a woman's in an abusive relationship, she should endure because apparently divorce is the worst thing ever for the family. Okay, and I want to talk a bit about why obviously that's not true and why kids being in an abusive family is actually a lot worse than being raised by a single parent. Okay.
Body count.
There was one part I wanted to come in on, which was how would we make men great again? And I have built a platform on.
Okay, I think the best way that you can make men great again is to have podcasts like this where you make fun of women and try to make women look stupid in order to elevate men. And when you advocate for women staying in abusive relationships and put the blame on the woman if she leaves an abuser, you know, I think that makes men look really great and really helps disprove like the propaganda about masculinity being toxic and about men being misogynists. Okay, just saying.
Praising men, I guess, and trying to recognize men's struggles. But I also want to make it clear that I do hold men accountable. I worked at I think I talked about this last time, but I worked at a prison for 4 years, all 4 years of college. I worked at a max security men's prison, and I think that's what got me into kind of protecting men. And every single situation I dealt with in the prison, I tutored like 4 guys a day when I went in there. Did not have a father. And I would say it was 50-50. 50% of the cases, the father walked out, and 50% of the cases, the mother would not let the father be in the child's picture.
Situation.
Yeah, in the child's life. So, at least in the criminal side of it, fathers in the home play like every situation I've seen. So I wanted to make that clear that me supporting men doesn't mean I'm not holding them accountable.
Are you saying that in order to make men great again, we need to have as many fathers in the home as possible?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree with that.
Every situation I ever saw with fathers not in the home was horrible. It was basically, I don't want to speak on any specific cases, but when fathers weren't in the home, men went to a lot of gang-related situations, and they would do things to fit into the hierarchy, and doing those things would be.
Do you have any like just hot-based dating takes?
Dating takes?
Yeah.
What was wrong with those takes?
Gangs, prisons, you know.
They go to gangs and prisons because they have no sense of family and community at home. Because 9 times out of 10, they're coming from a single mother household, which is like the bane on any existence of any society.
Yeah.
Single mother households are the cancer of this earth. If you want to have like a good, stable, functioning society, single mother households are the absolute antithesis of what you need to be doing.
And feminism has contributed to that, which is
For
why
sure,
it's degenerate.
1,000%.
Okay, wait.
1,000%.
Okay, I kind of think that the hatred of single mothers, not just from these guys, but from like pretty much most of the manosphere and red pill community, is kind of they're showing the same kind of prejudice that they claim to be against. Okay, like they talk about how you shouldn't discriminate against men, right? You shouldn't say masculinity is toxic. Stuff like teach men not to be violent. They speak out about this kind of prejudice against men, but they're showing the same prejudice against women when you just sit there and say like, oh, you're a woman on your own and you're looking after children. Well, that automatically means that you're a completely terrible person and a terrible mother and a cancer on this society. Okay? Now, I understand, like, the wanting to stick up for fathers and wanting to say that fathers are important, okay, and that people shouldn't be kicking good dads out of the family and away from the kids, okay? But there is inevitably going to be some single parents, okay? Some people will become single parents because one of the parents dies, okay? But when it comes to divorce, okay, most of the time the children live with the mother. I mean, I think that the parents normally have split custody, like, okay, and not all divorces are women's fault, you know, like, all kinds of things can go wrong in a marriage, okay, and as we know from listening to various red pill channels, that some guys believe that a woman should stick with her husband even if he's cheating on her, but think that the man should divorce the woman if she's cheating on him, and these guys, well, we're going to get to this in a minute, think that the woman should even stay with a violent or abusive husband. Okay, so there's this real prejudice against single mothers. They're so strong that they would even rather a woman stay with an abusive partner, and that they'd rather have kids brought up in an abusive home than with a single mother. Now, some single parents, they do the absolute best out of a not ideal situation. So to say that all single mothers are cancer in society and to like just disregard anybody who's a single mother. It's the same prejudice that they claim to be against, okay? It's like, yes, you can get some deadbeat mothers, just like you can get some deadbeat dads, okay? There are going to be some single mothers that will just have loads of kids with different fathers, and, like, they just claim benefits and don't want to work. There's some single mothers that are terrible, but then there's some that are going to do a really good job. But, definitely anybody, male or female, should get away from their partner if they are abusive, and the kids should be gotten away from somebody who's abusive as well. Okay, and also it's like interesting as well that these guys, a lot of guys in the red pill manosphere, the conservatives, Christians, and all that, they go on about their strict gender roles and in the fact that the woman's supposed to be the mother, the homemaker, the carer, the nurturer. The dad's supposed to be the protector and the provider. And if you got the man to like do the woman role, that you'd be emasculating him. Or if women go out and get high power jobs, they're not going to be happy because they're all supposed to be the caring, nurturing mothers. But as soon as they get divorced, then they change their tune and go on about how, oh, but women shouldn't be left alone with the children. They can't do it without a man. And they suddenly change their tune and act as if like women are too stupid to look after children. And I kind of think, really, they're threatened by women being successful at all. Like a lot of red pillars, they don't like women being successful, say like in the business world, in careers and all that. And they'll say like, oh, it's because they think that the women are supposed to be mothers. But some of it is because they don't want women to outdo men, okay? But then if a woman's a mother and she's a single mother, they don't want her to do well then because they don't like to think that women can cope without men, okay? They would rather, like if a woman's raising kids on her own, they'd rather believe like, oh, she's going to do a bad job and the kids are going to be delinquents, than like have her proven wrong and like do a good job and raise healthy, happy children, okay? And I say again, even though I agree with what the MRA say about like wanting to like highlight the importance of fathers in the home, but there's still going to be some times when it is going to be inevitable that couples break up or one dies. Okay, so there's going to be some single parents. There's no getting away from it.
Feminist,
that was why that
feminism
was
just
like
to
that was
blame
so
for everything.
interesting because they were like,
No,
other
I
than
think
feminism, what is to blame for the collapse of the family structure? And it's like at that
Feminist.
point, the slice of the pie chart remaining would be so obscure, it'd be something like fucking video games.
I think
Because
a lot of
feminism-
Not even video
women-
games. Not even
let
video
her
games.
No,
speak.
I just want to say this very quickly. I agree that single parent households are
Single
women-
mother,
sorry,
single
I agree.
mother.
Yeah, single mother households is bad. I completely agree
Are
with
bad.
you guys.
Correct.
Ew,
However,
gross.
I think you have to take
Sorry,
into consideration that like
Just the PDA.
How this was what you wanted to see us. We
Hey guys,
Let her talk, please. It was.
Just-
Hey guys, let's let
Okay.
Pixie speak.
You were playing
Let's
tongue hockey
stop,
with your
stop,
eyes.
please stop. Let's let Pixie speak.
I
Listen
feel
to
like
Chase.
a lot of times when people use this rhetoric, but they sometimes paint this false picture that it's okay for people to stay together if it means not being a single mother household, even if the situation, the relationship is super toxic, abusive, just not healthy. So I agree, single parent, single mother households are horrible. Completely agree with that. But I do think they're better than staying with somebody if he's being abusive to you. If
No.
he's hitting you, you should not raise your child in that environment. You should get your child out of there because that person is being a danger to your family, to you, and to your child. So I agree
with that.
Yeah.
But that is still an anomaly. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, this
Extreme
is a
anomaly.
true statistic.
Extreme
And
anomaly.
80% of couples can recover from that in 5 years, and I think it's fundamentally selfish. And you can tell because the type of people who say that they're like, "Well, I just wasn't happy, so it's better for the child." It's absolutely not. It's not better for the child.
really
But they think that because they're so prideful, they don't want to address whatever they're doing wrong, and their partner is probably, because water seeks its own level, probably just as prideful and narcissistic and doesn't want to address what's wrong and fix themselves. And so they think, well, I'm not happy, so the child must really not be happy. It destroys, especially young boys, if they don't have their father in the household, they're not socialized properly. Like they're literally screwed for the rest of their lives. Daughters, they don't. It's not as effective to them. I mean, they like get a little bit more promiscuous with the guys they date, but in terms of like literally just like derailing someone's trajectory in life, young girls can more or less recover pretty well, but boys are like fucked if their dad's.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, like, they're just saying no straight away when somebody says that it's better to get kids out of an abusive household. Like, I would have thought anybody with half a brain would know that it's better to get kids out of an abusive household. Like, if the claim that, like, oh, if a boy doesn't have his dad, like, then he's totally, he's no good, he's a lost cause, he's gonna have loads of problems just because he doesn't have a dad. Now, it's like, I mean, I get that it is probably, like, more important for boys to have a male role model, but when we are talking about an abusive dad, which is what they're talking about here, because I understand that, like I said, it can be either the mother or the father or both of them that's abusive, but when the question is specifically put that, like, should a mother get away from an abusive father, to say no because boys need a male role model, it's like, I'm sorry, but what kind of male role model do you think they're going to have if we're talking about an abusive dad, okay? It's like, it's good for boys to have good male role models, but it would not be good for them to grow up with an abusive dad, because they're either, I mean, some of them may learn to be like their dad and may grow up with anger issues and being violent as well, or they might go the other way and they might actually dislike their own gender, because that can happen, like, girls with daddy issues can then, like, sometimes have a man-hating attitude when they grow up, or sometimes will go on to choose bad men themselves because they don't expect better from men, okay? And also boys, like, if they have mummy issues, can grow up and have a woman-hating attitude. But it can also happen that people can dislike their own gender, like a woman who didn't have a very good mum can then dislike her own gender and be prejudiced, can have like a bias where they think it's always the woman in the wrong. Or a guy, if a man like grew up with an abusive or violent dad, he can like dislike male gender and always like defend the woman and think men are in the wrong. So either way, like, it can mess people up, all right, being raised by not a good parents that aren't very good, or parents that are abusive and violent, okay? It is ridiculous for anybody to make the argument that kids should be raised by violent or abusive parents.
I just wanted to say, as someone who's studying law, I take a lot of criminology classes, and it is true that men who are raised in single mother households end up becoming criminals because of the lack of the father figure in their life.
Yes, as she
And
was just making that point.
Yeah.
Criminals, homeless,
What
suicide,
is it? Yeah,
promiscuity.
what you got
I think it's
for
important to
Melina?
shine. I just think it's important to shine light on the whole fatherless.
It is also true that somebody who is raised with either one of their parents being violent or both of their parents being violent are more likely to be violent themselves, which I assume means that they are more likely to go to prison as well. So it's not just like, oh, if you're raised by a single mother that you're more likely to go to prison. If you were raised by violent parents, you're more likely to be violent, so therefore more likely to go to prison, okay? Now, this is something that Erin Pizzey has talked about, okay? And she's a woman who, she's worked with both men and women who've been victims of domestic violence, and she has worked with both men and women that have, like, issues that make them violent, okay? So she knows quite a thing about all this, okay? And she says it's a cycle of violence, it's a generational thing, okay? That, people who are violent were normally raised by either one or both of their parents being violent.
And what kind of abuse were they?
Mostly from the ones that actually were violent themselves, you could see were mostly from violent-prone families. Because it is generational. That's what I was trying to say. Look, have a look at this. Because the idea was, the feminist ideology, and also what they talked about was all these innocent, hapless women coming in with children with these brutal, violent men behind them. No, it's not like that. Any more than it is for men. I mean, there are men who are extraordinarily violent, coming from violent backgrounds. But there's plenty of men who, by accident, get involved with violent women and end up suffering exactly the same way.
Well, both my parents were violent. And I'd always known it to be a intergenerational family problem, because I could trace mine back both sides. Both my parents were abused children. And in the creating of this victim role, it's taken away. I find it incredibly patronizing, because women are equally as able to be violent, like I was. If you come from a violent home, many people will transcend, but some of us, like me, transcend because something intervenes in my life to show me a different way.
Melina, what was it that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just curious. I just wanted to see like an honest answer on this one. If there's someone that's very, very young, who might be really religious and like values marriage a lot, and goes into a marriage and has kids when they're like 18, 19, 20, and then a year into the relationship, it gets really, really abusive.
From
Would
who?
you, from both?
This is so rare.
Anyone
It's
really.
rare.
Even if it's
Go on,
very-
go on.
My point is, I'm just, even though it might be rare.
Yeah, it's really, really rare, even though everybody knows at least one person that's been in an abusive relationship. And these guys know people that have been in an abusive relationship. We know that because they go on to talk about it in a moment, okay? But yeah, it's really, really so rare that it never happens.
From what you guys think.
It is.
If it would happen, what would you recommend for those people to do? Will they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in the relationship?
You can't divorce. I mean, that's not a real thing. You can like separate. See, his Catholic background shines through. You know that. You can you can separate, but you can't actually divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You gotta endure. People are too.
You want to stick in a
People
relationship?
are just.
See, I mean, look,
people
I'm gonna be
nowadays
honest.
are just pussies. Everybody fucking quits. Everybody gives up. It's too hard. I'm this XYZ. This is why I'm special, so I could fuck up this entire situation based upon me being special. And the reality is,
I think that has got to be like one of the most absolute goddamn insensitive things I've ever heard, okay? For somebody to turn around and say that you are a pussy if you get out of an abusive relationship, that you should endure, that, oh, you're being selfish and you think you're special. It's like, no, most people don't think that they're special just because they don't think that they should have to be somebody's punching bag, okay? So that they don't have to, endure physical, mental, sexual abuse and have to live in complete and utter fear every day, okay? Somebody getting away from that does not mean that they are goddamn special, okay? Most people, if you knew that somebody was in an abusive relationship, most people would be worried about that person. Like, you'd be thinking like, oh my God, I'm really worried, what they're going home to, like, what's their life is like, what's going to happen to them? Would they end up killing themselves? Will they end up being killed? Or are they going to just live in hell forever? You'd be really worried if it was somebody you know.
people just haven't learned to fucking endure. There have been hard times in relationship. I'm sure you guys had hard times in relationship. Any relationship has hard times, and it is what it is. You need to push through, and you need
What if
to
the
endure
kid
because
is
we're in
being
this.
abused?
Hold on, because we're in this situation now, like where everybody's just creating these like super nuanced, like 1% example of like, well, what if the kid's fucking transgender, black, and abused, and he's a Black Lives Matter supporter? Like, cool, okay, I get like that one fucking
No, but I'm
minute
asking for anyone
situation.
that might be in that situation, what would you recommend?
Okay, here's-
Endure.
I'll tell
Would
you
they
what-
give up
I'll tell you
divorce?
what I
Endure.
would
I don't-
do.
that's-
I'll tell you what.
Endure.
I'll tell you what I would do. If my daughter was in a relationship with a guy and she gets married to him and he starts abusing her a year into it, I'm gonna be showing up on their doorstep and teaching him some lessons. That's what I would do. I also would
but,
not, if I didn't have the capacity to do that for some reason, I don't know, I wouldn't want my daughter in that situation, quite frankly. And I understand the argument to endure because I have people close to me who grew up in abusive households, and it lasted for periods of time, and it was a phase, and they endured through it, and they ended up raising healthy, successful families.
See what I mean when I said they know people that have been in abusive relationships before? They try to say it's really, really rare, and then they're like, oh yeah, I know people that have been in abusive relationships before. And see, like what I said in the last video, they sweep it under the table. They try to make out like it's not serious. He's like, oh, it's just a phrase that they just went through, but they still raised happy, successful adults. It's like, you don't know that. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Just because these people you're talking about, you say, oh, it's just a phrase. It's like, well, first of all, adults don't go through phases of just beating the crap out of their loved ones, okay? And also, you don't know that it was just a phase because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. People don't abuse their partners in front of everybody most of the time. But also, like, the kids, you don't know what damage was done to them because people don't normally talk about their mental health issues in front of other people. Like, these adults, they might have grown up to be adults that were like, came across as like, quite good members of society, okay, but they could have mental health issues that you don't know about, or even if they don't have like any specific mental health issues, it still would have been upsetting for the children to have been in a household like that at the time, okay? So again, it's just the sweeping it under the table. It's like, we don't want to believe this happens. We want to be an ostrich that sticks our head in the sand, and we don't want to believe this happens, so we'll just assume like, oh, it's just a phrase, and everybody's going to be fine, because that's what you'd rather believe than accept the actual truth.
To an extent.
So you would say that to stick in those relationships that might be abusive to everyone involved and a child, if there's a
I'm
child.
not saying like, hey, stick in the relationship and get the shit beat out of you by
No,
the
no,
husband.
no,
I'm
no,
not-
an extreme. I'm just asking you what you believe.
I'm just telling you,
Even
I'm
if
not
it's a
telling
small
you-
extreme thing, I'm just asking you what you think if you.
Okay, now he says that he wouldn't expect a woman to endure beatings every day, but he does later go on to say that he thinks that if a man is only occasionally getting drunk and coming back and beating his wife, that's not too bad. When, no, people shouldn't endure beatings from their partner ever, at all, okay? These guys wouldn't endure a woman cheating on them once, so a woman shouldn't have to put up with being beaten any amount of times.
Stick in that relationship or not.
It is such an extreme example that I can't give a prescription for what other people should do. There is an element of
How do you guys feel
value.
about
Hold on. There is an element of value in what he's saying, but all I can tell you is what I would do
How do you
as
guys feel
a
about? Do you
father
guys
of
all
a
have
daughter in a
opinions on
situation like that.
Do you have opinions about third trimester abortion?
It's
Yes.
terrible.
Listen,
It's terrible. Look at how quickly they get it. Do you know how rare third trimester abortions are? They're also really fucking rare. But you immediately had a visceral reaction to that, right? There are households where parents are abusive to children. Like, that's not like an unfathomable thing. But for you to have that immediate visceral reaction to a type of abortion, that's so incredibly rare. But then when
I mean, we're
it's like,
talking about like a guy like getting drunk and like beating
have to be
his
getting
wife
drunk.
occasionally versus like somebody puncturing a woman's stomach with a needle and injecting euthanasia into the baby's eye socket.
I'm
It's
just
like a
saying, all I'm
grisly,
saying is that
terrible
third
thing,
trimester
and it's
abortion
murder.
is incredibly rare. But you have a
Okay, if these guys find it disturbing, the idea of a baby inside the womb being injected through their eye and having their life ended that way, then surely the idea of a baby inside the womb being beaten to death by an abuser should be slightly disturbing as well. Okay. Now, seeing as these guys are not so concerned about all the women that die every day as a result of domestic violence, but they are concerned about the life of babies inside the womb, then like it should be worth pointing out that if a woman is pregnant and in an abusive relationship, this is likely to be harmful to the baby because the woman is permanently stressed and she has stress hormones going through her body all the time. And this is very bad for the baby, and this can lead to problems in the baby's development as well, okay? Now, with that in mind, and bearing in mind that these guys care about the life of a baby inside the woman's womb, then surely if a woman was pregnant with twins, they would not be thinking that the woman should stay with her abuser.
Thank you. Let's be honest. Women say everything is abuse.
Yeah.
Facts. So true. There is truth to that.
So
There
true.
is.
There is truth
It's
to
like
that.
cut
Like
toxic
Steven
people
Crowder
out
was
of your
not
life.
abusing his wife at all. That was
Oh my
just
God,
blown
he
over.
absolutely was.
That was
Come on, dude.
that was
Oh,
3
shit, we're
minutes.
getting
Like
into this one, huh?
3 minutes of him making a mistake. Sorry for the tens of millions of dollars I made, baby. I'm having a moment as a human right now.
can't
Wait, if you
buy
make
happiness
money,
in a
if you make
relationship.
money, you can act like a pig.
Yeah.
No, but he made a mistake. You're taking a
Yes, of course they do, which kind of proves that they're not really that fussed about the safety of children and the welfare and happiness of children, whether they're inside or outside the womb, okay? It's just swept under the carpet, alright? So that's all I've got to say about that for now. Thank you for listening.